Everything we are accustomed to calling our life is not a fixed, objective given existing on its own, but rather a continuous succession of alternating modes of perception. When we try to define what the mind is, it inevitably takes the form of the description we give it. It is impossible to find the mind as some tangible component. We only see the result of its work. It is generally accepted that the mind is a collection of cognitive functions, from filtering sensory data and building logical connections to the ability to construct internal models of reality and become aware of the thinking process itself. But have you ever noticed that any reflections on the nature of the mind occur exclusively from a single vantage point, the waking state? Everything you can realize or analyze right now exists strictly within its boundaries. Therefore, it can be said that wakefulness itself is indeed one of the states of the mind. Fundamentally, every person has three such states, and they continually alternate. The first is wakefulness, the densest and most familiar state to us. Being in it, we rigidly associate ourselves with the physical body. Here a clear division exists. There is the I and there is the external world. In this state, we play social roles, solve problems, and perceive physical matter. It seems to us that this is the only real life. The second state is dreaming. This is a subtle plane of perception. This includes not only ordinary night sleep, where you suddenly find yourself inside a random plot, but generally any experience is occurring without the active participation of the physical body. This means lucid dreams where you can control reality. It means subtle spiritual visions, near-death experiences, clinical death, or experiences gained during deep practices. However vivid these visions may seem, their platform is always the second state of the mind, the state of non-physical experiences. The third state is deep sleep without dreams. You close your eyes in the evening and open them in the morning. Between these events is an absolute void. You perceive nothing. Neither the world, nor thoughts, nor the very feeling of I exists. Here we should also include a deep faint or the effect of strong anesthesia, when a person passes out without dreams or visions. The mind in this third state does not disappear entirely. It resides there in a sleep mode. It simply perceives nothing. These three states are united by one thing. After them, we always return to the physical body, and the mind acknowledges these states as its own. Yet besides these three, there is another, a fourth state. In various traditions, it is called differently: Turiya, Samadhi, or awakening. There is a paradox to this state. It is a state of the mind, but at the same time, it is not. How is this possible? The fourth state is the moment of the conscious and complete disappearance of the mind into its source, into the truth. The problem is that when the mind completely disappears, there is no one left who could say, "I am." You simply were not there. There was only the foundation itself, the truth itself, but you do not know what this is from inside the experience itself because there was nothing to perceive with. But why do we still call this a state of the mind? Because the mind returns from this truth back to the physical body. And now it clearly knows it was neither a feint nor a dream. It was its total disappearance. For the first time, it was absent from something. Because the mind has returned, for it, this experience becomes a completed phase, a state. But the truth itself into which it disappeared is not a state. It is the foundation for everything, the base for wakefulness, for dreams, and for deep sleep. Having returned from the fourth state, the enlightened mind realizes a shocking thing. All its previous states literally consist of the very same truth into which it just dissolved. But even this fourth state can be divided into two different depths, called awakening and enlightenment. Awakening is when the disappearance of the mind occurs without the loss of perception of the world. In this moment, the mind does not switch off completely, but becomes an absolutely clear lens. It is used simply as a tool through which objects can be perceived, and through this clear mind, the truth itself looks at the objects. It suddenly recognizes itself standing simultaneously behind the mind and behind all objects, because the mind is, ultimately, also the truth. It is simply its first, most basic form from which everything else then solidifies. The truth in this moment simply knows that it exists with the help of the switched-on, clear mind and the objects. The deeper level of the fourth state is enlightenment. This is when the mind totally disappears with a complete loss of perception of the world. External reality is erased, subtle experiences are erased, the final form disintegrates. In this state, the truth ceases to know even that it exists. There is no time, no space, no feeling of I, absolute zero. Where does the knowledge of this experience come from if no one is there? It is all about contrast. The mind learns about the truth not because it sat inside it with a notepad and wrote everything down. This realization is born in the second of its return. Imagine that an audio track abruptly stopped, leaving 5 seconds of absolute silence, and then started playing again. The silence itself does not know about itself, but the sound, when it returns, registers on a sharp contrast. I was just absent, yet the tape kept running. The absolute zero itself lasts outside of time, and there is truly no one there. The mind realizes not the truth itself, but the fact of its own emergence from it. When the mind begins to return and solidify, it relives the very principle of creation anew. A staggering spectacle opens up to it. It sees how right out of this zero its own perception, personality, and the entire world are born. Having received such a grandiose impression of the process of its own creation, the mind often falls into a panic. But it is not frightened by the truth itself. It is frightened by the realization of its own illusory nature. The shocking fact that it has just been assembled out of absolute emptiness. Usually after this, the mind, instead of simply surrendering, begins to hunt for the state of enlightenment, trying again and again to get into it. It tries to appropriate this experience for itself. It thinks, if I get into this state again, if I take possession of it, then I will become invulnerable. I will become God. I will gain eternal control. It simply does not understand that you cannot own that of which you consist, and a person is forced to live through these efforts until they completely eradicate within themselves the one who wants to appropriate this truth. Only then does genuine, absolute peace arrive. The search ends, because the mind clearly sees the truth exists when I am completely switched off, and it exists all the more when I am actively engaged in wakefulness. There are no gaps. The truth is one and the same, both during deep meditation and during a trip to the shop, and there is no need to make a single effort for it to exist. It is always there. If the mind is capable of disappearing into Samadhi, and then reappearing as if nothing had happened, what is this phenomenon anyway? We are used to perceiving the mind as a sort of organ, as a thing inside the head. But if it were an independent object, it would be impossible to switch off whilst preserving a living, clear consciousness. The mind cannot be weighed, touched, or captured on MRI scans. It has no form and no boundaries. The mind is not a thing, it is a mode of operation. It is a function, a specific tuning of the unitary consciousness. Imagine a projector in a dark cinema. There is the light of the lamp. This is the pure energy of consciousness. There is the film strip with frames. This is the mind. When the light passes through the film, a motion picture appears on the screen. The plot, the characters, the scenery. We look at the screen and believe that everything happening is real, that I am the main character, and the world around is the scenery. But in reality, there is only the light of the lamp passing through the film. So too is the mind. It is a mechanism that takes the unitary essence and refracts it, creating a picture. It splits the unified whole into the observer, the observed, and the process of observation. So, does the mind actually exist? It is impossible to answer this question with a definitive yes or no. In absolute reality, in the absolute zero, there is no mind. As an independent object detached from reality, it does not exist. But in our life, everything that you see, feel, and realize, all this manifested reality exists exclusively in the form of the mind. To call it non-existent would be a mistake, because without this film, the cinema of life simply will not be broadcast. Therefore, the mind is reality in action. It exists as a function, as a necessary tool through which consciousness observes itself. When the mind is switched on, it is this very world. It is simultaneously the greatest illusion and our only interface for experiencing life. It both is and it is not, and both of these statements are equally true. In spiritual circles, seekers often say the whole world is unreality. Everything around is just a matrix, an illusion, Maya. People experience the first glimpse of awakening and begin to label life as a fake. Their mind now thinks, I know the truth, whilst everything around is make-believe. But let us look at the very essence. What is an illusion? The very concept of an illusion is a product of that same dualistic mind. To call something an illusion, the mind needs to contrast it with something real. It attaches the label unreal to take the position of a judge who supposedly stands outside the game. But as soon as it utters this word, it falls into its own trap. It separates itself from reality, creating two sides, itself as the knower and the world as the deception. The truth, however, transcends these labels. The truth is simply that which is, and it manifests itself in exactly the same way, both in the silence of enlightenment and in our attempts to call this world a matrix. Let us look at how this launch of perception actually occurs. It seems to us that waking up in the mornings, or our very birth, is an instantaneous click. Snap, and we are here. But in reality, it is a process of gradual solidification, which simply occurs at an incredible speed. The experience of enlightenment allows one to see this process of reality's solidification as if in slow motion. At first, a pure flash emerges, a depersonalized feeling of I exist. In this instant, there is neither a physical body nor a world around, nor the slightest understanding of who you are. And immediately following this, a simultaneous appearance occurs. The physical body and external reality flare up synchronously. In the final stage, the sense organs connect, beginning to color this picture, and memory is loaded. That very memory which immediately suggests you are 30 years old, you live on planet Earth, and the universe appeared as a result of the Big Bang. A social personality with its own name and history is formed. This entire continuous process of unfolding from a pure flash to a complex personality, this is your mind. The world and you appear simultaneously. You cannot prove the existence of the room when you are in a deep sleep without dreams. Neither you nor the room is there. We are told from school the universe is 14 billion years old. The world existed long before your birth and will safely continue to exist after your death. And your mind is merely a byproduct of evolution, a biological accident. Yes, other people can confirm that the world was there before you. There are historical facts. There are witnesses. But let us be honest with our own perception. Other people are talking about their world, which unfolded in exactly the same way, simultaneously with their consciousness. You, however, cannot live through anyone else's experience but your own. For you, the universe arose in exactly the same fraction of a second when your feeling of I appeared. Consciousness will always know that it exists, and this is possible in only one single way, in the form of a manifested world, that is, in the form of all objects entirely. Your physical body is exactly the same object within this consciousness as a tree or a chair. Consciousness uses this body as a tool. It seemingly disguises itself as an individuality in order to look at other objects through these eyes. At this moment, your unique world and your point of perception arise. When you die or fall into a deep sleep, it is exactly your individual mask that switches off. That unique world which was broadcast specifically for you indeed folds up completely and disappears. But why do others continue to see your body? Because other individualities, other people, remain switched on at this moment. Consciousness continues to look at the world through their masks. Therefore, for other people, in their worlds, your switched-off body simply remains a perceivable object that they can bury and remember. What, then, is the difference from materialism? Materialism says that since your body is buried by others, it means this world is an independent monolith, and you were simply a random, insignificant detail in it that disappeared, and the world did not even notice. But the truth shifts the focus into the absolute value of your perception. Yes, others will see you being buried, but for you, your world arose strictly together with you and will collapse together with you. You have never known and will never know any objective world existing without you. Therefore, your personal value as the one who is looking is absolutely equal to the value of this entire gigantic world that you see before you. Because for you, both the observer and the observed arose and will disappear on the same conditions. They are absolutely equivalent. It is always 50-50. But we decide ourselves the moment we disrupt this balance. We diminish the value of our presence, making ourselves out to be a tiny grain of sand whilst placing the external world on a pedestal. We run around it, demanding that it makes us happy, but seeking happiness in objects is pointless, because before we divided ourselves and the world into the important and the unimportant, we were already whole by default. Why then are we in the same room with other people? Why do worlds intersect? The answer lies in the concept of the collective mind. We, as a biological species, possess a genetically determined template. We have similar sense organs which broadcast a common foundation platform to us. The presence of deep sleep, dreaming, and wakefulness is our collective foundation. Indeed, there are no guarantees that we see identically the exact same room. Someone has perfect vision, someone is short-sighted, someone else perceives colors differently. If an artist and an architect enter the room, one will see the play of shadows and the other the structure of the building. We share a common basic platform, but each of us lives our own absolutely unique world. Was the universe there without someone to perceive it? No, never. The truth, or consciousness, has never existed without a manifested world. The observer and the observed arise strictly simultaneously. Its very existence is conditioned by the fact that consciousness becomes aware of itself through forms. No perception means no objects. Does this mean that the world did not exist without humans? We tend to consider ourselves the crown of creation and the only real observers. But for the unitary consciousness, the human body is nothing more than one of billions of available tools, simply one of a multitude of possible masks. Is perception possible through animals, insects, or cells? Absolutely. Any living form, from a giant whale and a bee to the simplest amoeba or a plant cell, is a point of perception. Consciousness uses them in exactly the same way as our body to look at the manifested world. The only difference lies in exactly what kind of world unfolds through them. A dog has its own biological template. Its universe is filled with highly complex smells and sounds, but is devoid of our abstract concepts of time and history. An ant's world is assembled from chemical trails and vibrations. For a plant, it is the perception of light, gravity, moisture, and temperature. Every living being lives through its own absolute, unique, complete world, and all these billions of worlds are pulsating right now within the unitary consciousness. Therefore, the world exists perfectly well without humans. If we look at this through the concept of linear time, then prior to the appearance of the human species, consciousness simply perceived itself through other biological forms: ancient reptiles, the first fish, bacteria. A human is simply a very specific lens that has learned not only to reflect the world, but also to create a complex abstract mind, to ask questions about itself, and to invent concepts of the past and the future. But for the very fact of the universe's existence, the presence of a human specifically is not required at all. It is enough for consciousness simply to perceive. The mental experience of deep enlightenment is the greatest gift of life. It is a unique opportunity, whilst in a living body, to survive your mental death and then to consciously observe your own birth anew. When you see through direct experience how the world dissolves into zero and solidifies back again, all intellectual questions fall away. This grandiose preview of creation permanently closes the debate in the mind about who created the universe and where everything came from, because you clearly see it was not created. It simply is, without beginning and without end.
Thank you for your time and attention. If this topic resonated with you and you want to see the project grow, you can support Omega Point by clicking the Join button. My sincere gratitude to those who have already chosen to support our work. This is Omega Point. We explore reality so you can feel it.